So, when I first started posting regularly to YouTube, it began with me uploading pretty much just one thing, which of course was music. You see, for almost as long as I can remember, ever since I was just a little itty bitty beady baby, I've always been utterly fascinated with music. Whether it's rock, techno, classical, heck, if it's got a catchy melody and an infectious rhythm, I do not discriminate. For the most part. But let's be real, who doesn't love music? I mean, everyone's got to have at least one song that makes their hearts flutter every time they hear it, right? I don't. Oh, you see, there you go. Now, as I was saying, I believe that we all have a special moment in our lives when we hear a certain song, one that just sticks with us for the rest of our lives. For me, it happened while I was still in early elementary school. I think during some kind of silent reading period where we'd all get to read a book for maybe 20 or 30 minutes. Well, at some point, our teacher, probably bored out of her mind, thought it would be a good idea to also have music playing while we did this. Now, by this point in my life, my exposure to music was still pretty much limited to Sunday school hymns and maybe a handful of children's tunes, usually sung by some big purple dinosaur. And to be honest, I wasn't a big fan. Apparently, neither was our teacher, because rather than playing the itty-bitty kitty schlock we were normally subjected to, she decided to bring in an old record player, along with an album she claimed that had come from her own personal collection. Now, I don't think I'd ever seen, let alone heard, a vinyl record before, so I honestly had no idea what to expect. But when my teacher dropped the needle onto that spinning black disc, that was the moment I was introduced to the magic of pop. Oh, freaking! No, not you, Magic Popcorn Man. I was talking about the 1960... Wait, what? Oh, what are you... Okay. Okay, time for a history lesson. You see, back in 1964, a groundbreaking new instrument known as the Moog synthesizer had just been unveiled to the world. Named after its creator, Robert Moog, it was essentially the predecessor of what you would basically nowadays just call an electric piano. Only this one came with a few extra buttons. Maybe a slightly bigger user's manual. While not necessarily the first of its kind, in fact, the concept of using electricity to create music was floated around as far back as 1876, when Elisha Graham, one of the early pioneers of the modern-day telephone, discovered that different musical notes could be produced by alternating voltages through certain types of electrical receivers. This would eventually lead to the creation of some of the very first rudimentary synthesizers, such as the telharmonium around the turn of the 19th century, and the first programmable synthesizer, the RCA Mark II, in 1955. But it wouldn't be until Moog's commercially viable option released in 1964 that musicians and songwriters were finally able to really get their hands on this newfangled, almost space-age-like technology. Now, this is where things got really interesting, because one artist in particular, named Gershon Kingsley, would go as far as to proclaim this new invention as the future of music, a device capable of producing sounds never before heard by the human ear. A claim that would ultimately come to fruition in 1969 with the release of Kingsley's revolutionary popcorn. Now, what made this such a revolutionary event was that this was the very first time that the public had ever been exposed to this new frontier of electronically synthesized music. And man, they just did not know what to do with it. I mean, look at them just trying their absolute best. I can't even dance to this nonsense. I ain't no cosmonaut. Though the initial release of popcorn was considered a commercial success at the time, selling particularly well in places like France and the UK, it never really managed to become what you would call a chart topper in any sense. However, this would all change in 1972 when the instrumental group named Hot Butter get it? Butter. You know, butter goes on popcorn. Would re-record the song, this time focusing more on the pop and less of the corn. This new catchier tune would eventually catapult popcorn across nearly every radio wave around the planet, leading to the song becoming an indisputed international hit. But it wouldn't stop there. In fact, this was just the beginning. A whole new genre of music that was about to be unleashed on the world. Well, nearly 30 years later, this new music would send me spiraling into a whole new reality. All at once, I felt as though I'd been swept up in a tidal wave of strange and beautiful vibrations. This wasn't some nursery rhyme or sing-along. No, this was just music. And for the next 2 minutes and 33 seconds, it would bore a hole directly into the center of my cerebral cortex, flipping a switch inside my mind as it proceeded to stamp itself into the very chemistry of my brain. And that's how my obsession started. This song had stoked something inside of me that I never even knew existed, like a pulsating inferno resonating through my very bones, catching fire to my blood as this frenzious flame of music engulfed my soul. And it was intoxicating. So like some blood-starved beast, I started ransacking my house for CDs, records, cassette tapes, anything that might possibly have music on it. I spent literal hours of the day rifling through track after track, searching for anything capable of replicating the same feeling I'd experienced in class that day. Like Alice tumbling down the rabbit hole, I found myself wandering a generational wonderland of classics. From Aerosmith to ZZ Top, Vivaldi to Bach. After a while, it wasn't even enough for me to just listen to the music either. I wanted to take part in this raw, primal form of human expression. I wanted to wield it within my own two hands and create something that I could call my very own. So I started playing literally anything and everything that I could get my hands on. Pianos, guitars, those little plucky things you play with your thumbs. Heck, I even convinced my mom to get me a violin at one point, which I'm sure must have been just a blast to live with those first couple of months. But I think the most life-altering moment for me came during my years in junior high. You see, there was this close friend of mine who also shared a similar passion for music. Not only that, he was an absolute computer wizard. If a wizard only knew one spell. And that spell was called torrent absolutely everything. So nearly every day after school, we would spend hours at his house, playing video games, eating burritos, all while downloading and listening to the best and greatest hits from all across the world. Seriously, if you haven't had the privilege of letting Russian techno literally melt your eardrums, you truly have not lived. But anyway, one day my friend introduces me to this new program called Fruity Loops Studios, or FL Studios for short. He explains to me that this is what was known as a DAW, otherwise known as a digital audio workstation, complete with digital synthesizers, drum tracks, and even audio recording and playback. Blech. Sorry, this part of the script is really hard to read through for some reason. Basically, it was an entire recording studio jam-packed into a single computer program. And I think it was at this moment that I realized, oh my gosh, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. A way for some random kid like me to bottle up this energy inside into something that's actually tangible. A way to finally present myself to the rest of the world and say, I made this. Oh my gosh. Now, this is the part where I wish I could say my journey of creating music began, but it wasn't. You see, at the time, my family was not what you might call financially stable. This is not really something fun for me to talk about, but, well, my father abandoned my mom and 4 older siblings when I was still only 3 years old, leaving us basically penniless while he went off to, ironically, pursue his own musical journey, which, yeah, that's a whole other can of psychological worms that we can discuss some other time. But suffice to say, we didn't really have the spare cash lying around to outright buy a computer capable of running this kind of software. So, with nothing else that could be done about it, I was forced to shelve this dream for perhaps some other day. Life continued on, and as the years flew by, those aspirations slowly started to get pushed farther and farther into the background. Before I knew it, I had a family, a steady job. Hey, don't get me wrong, I never regretted any of those decisions, but in the back of my mind, it felt as though there was something I'd forgotten. And if I didn't do something about it sooner than later, it might just slip away from me forever. Luckily, that would all change one day when, seemingly out of the blue, a free trial of FL Studios would come knocking on my door. And I think, it went something like this. And just like that, this unhinged psychopath of a computer program would light me up with a sudden surge of inspiration. Yeah, I know, like, what? Were we all just sad and stuff a few seconds ago? Well, my dear viewers, we're just gonna fast forward to the good part because life is short, and so is your attention span. Yeah, that's right. You think I didn't see you scrolling through all those other videos while you were watching mine? You think I didn't see that? I can see everything. So anyway, having regained this renewed sense of inspiration, I immediately acted on impulse and traded in my left kidney for a high-end gaming PC. It's for making music. Afterwards, I gave myself a crash course in FL Studios music editing software, cracked open a carton of brain batter, and began whipping up my brain baby. Finally, I'd begun my musical journey, and I was on the way to creating my very first song. And no, I did not have to quit my job or abandon my family to do it, so yeah, screw you, Dad! Regardless, I was finally back on track to fulfilling my lifelong dream of creating music. And I knew it wouldn't be long before I could show the world what I was truly capable of. That is where I'm going to wrap up part 1 of this story because, my brain is starting to hurt. But if you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe so you can find out what happens next. And also, if you don't mind, if you'd be willing to share this video with all your favorite animators, well, that would just be super cool of you. Oh, and if you're an animator who commented on my last video, make sure to stay for the end credits for your personal shout-out. Other than that, I will see you all next time. Okay, bye! Again, thank you so much to these awesome animators. Those comments you left on my first video really inspired me to keep going. So, shout out to HydroTunes, Cardboard, Cheerio, Olive Stories, this guy, the nerd over here, Evanations, Rowan, Anilo, and Zanimations. You guys are like my heroes. I'm just so happy somebody watched my video. Okay, bye.